All right, guys, welcome back. And today, what we're going to go ahead and talk about is virtual private networks. Okay, VPN. I know you've heard about VPN, and today we're going to go ahead and talk about what exactly is it. And what types of VPNs they are. Before we begin this video, guys, I'm going to be 100% completely honest. Okay, we are going to go ahead and skim the surface when it comes to VPNs. We are not going to go ahead and do a deep dive. There's a lot of intricate things that are going on with VPN. VPN is basically one way to go ahead and secure communication. This is data in transit. Okay, this is one way to go ahead and secure communications. We have VPNs, we have TLS, we have IPsec. VPN technically uses some of the protocols within IPsec. IPsec is Internet Protocol Security. That is basically a suite of protocols within VPN, and the three types that we're going to go ahead and talk about today. There's different protocols being used on those types of VPNs as well. So I want to go ahead and give you full disclosure. There's a lot of things going out in the background. You have things of the nature of transport mode, tunneling mode, authentication header, encapsulating security payload. There's a lot of things going on when it comes to VPN, but today we're just going to get our feet wet and talk about the different types of VPNs. So let's go ahead and get that going. So VPN, what exactly is it? It's a virtual private network. It extends a private network over a public one, enabling users to securely send and receive data. What exactly do I mean by that? The best way I can give you, and the way I learned it, I mean, it might not be 100% completely correct, but at least it paints a picture and it gives me an idea. I think of it as a long highway. So you have this massive highway, and you can go ahead and you have your public transportation, and on the side you have your toll roads. Okay, you have like this little private lane, so to speak, where you can go ahead and drive. And what are you driving? You're driving your data out into basically the Ethernet, and then back in, so to speak. So the best way I can think about it is almost as a highway where you have your own dedicated lane. Okay, so that's exactly what it means when we extend a private network. So if you have your company's network, you're gonna send that network over the highway. Okay, and you're going to go ahead and connect to another private network, so to speak. And you're doing that using secure protocols and things that belong to nature, where you can encrypt and authenticate. That way there isn't any unauthorized access within that data, so to speak, so no one can penetrate through that data. So let's go on to the next thing. So types of VPNs. Okay, so there is different types of VPNs, and this is critical, and this is basically the heart of this video. Okay, we have a site-to-site VPN, we have a client-to-site VPN, and then we have a clientless VPN. Okay, so please go ahead and keep that in mind when it comes to basically the types of VPNs. Okay. So that is extremely 100% critical, because this is basically the essence of the video. And we're going to go ahead and talk about the different types of VPNs. But before we do, I want to go ahead and talk about the idea of full versus split tunnel. Okay. So, long story short, and it took me some time to realize this, but this was actually on one of the practice exams. The major difference between full and split tunnel, it comes back to the name of the game. Remember, there is a game that we are playing when it comes to IT: security and speed, speed and security. Now, by default, full tunnel. So remember, if you have a VPN, you basically have your full tunnel, aka your highway lane, that you would go ahead and start sending your data. You're trafficking your data with regards to that information. Um, so when it comes to a split tunnel, you can go ahead and start to say and get a little bit more, how do I say, not technical, but you can go ahead and start to configure things where you would actually get better performance. So this reminds me of that one time when you just used to talk about good idea, bad idea. Okay, is it a good idea to split tunnel Coca-Cola secret recipe? Bad idea. Okay, is it a good idea to go ahead and split tunnel what would be not necessarily split tunnel, but what I'm trying to say here is you have a full and you have a split tunnel. Okay, with the full tunnel, you're consistently sending all the information through that dedicated highway, and you would want to keep information such as Coca-Cola secret recipe, private identifiable information. If you have accounting numbers that you want to go ahead and keep secret, anything that would be detrimental to you, your organization, or the people that work within your organization, or the people that you service within your organization, that's something that you would definitely want to go ahead and put in a secure tunnel. However, split tunneling comes into the picture when you go ahead and you're saying, hey, this is public knowledge, this is public information. Why are we putting information or data that is public knowledge out in a full encrypted VPN tunnel that we don't necessarily need to have? That's where the idea of split tunneling comes in, because the split tunnel says, hey, this information is 100% critical. We don't want any of this information getting out to the public. Let's go ahead and put that in a highly secure encrypted tunnel when we transfer this information. On the other hand, if you have information that's just like, hey, this information is literally on our website, anybody can go ahead and see it. This is public information. This is public knowledge. It's not that critical. Let's go ahead and put this in a split tunnel and actually just send it through what would be what would be just the regular public internet. So you guys can start to see where that picture is painted between full and split tunnel. Just keep in mind that the full tunnel, okay, is by default. That is something that you would go ahead and have by default if you go ahead and decide to use a VPN. However, you can go ahead and start to have some type of configurations with regards to going ahead, categorizing and discriminating against certain information and data points that you would decide, hey, you know what? We don't necessarily need a fully encrypted VPN tunnel for this information, which would, at the end of the day, give you better performance. Let's go on to word of the day. And the word of the day is idempotence. Idempotence, 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 potato. But basically, idempotence is the ability of an operation to produce the same results no matter how many times it's executed. Idempotence is literally the opposite of intermittent. Where intermittent, it happens, it doesn't happen consistently. It happens on a periodic basis. Idempotence is 1 plus 1 is 2. 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 So this is more critical and this is more relevant when it comes to what would basically be software. So if you're fuzzing or if you're going ahead and testing software and you're just like, hey, the idempotence is not 100%. There's issues anytime we have uh, a third a third window open, or there's issues when we have going back to my 1 plus 1 is 2. 1 plus 1 is 2, but 1 plus 1 is not 2 if there's this application or this processes going on in this calculator, so to speak. So idempotence, that's more so for what would be software, but I think it's a cool word to learn, and it's something definitely that you should know. If someone brings up, you already know, hey, okay, there's basically some inconsistency within this operation or within this program, within this network, within this software, so on and so forth. So just keep that in mind, idempotence. Okay. Let's go on to what we were basically talking about, which is the types of VPNs. We have a site to site, a client to site, and a client list. There's technically a mobile VPN as well, but we're not going to talk about that today. So VPN site to site. This right here, guys, is basically what every enterprise would technically go ahead and use. And when I'm talking about enterprise, I'm talking about a large corporation. This isn't something that you would use for you to go ahead and talk to your grandma, because you don't want anyone knowing that you're talking to your grandma, so to speak. This right here would be considered for a large enterprise corporation. So this is something, if you have an office out, if you have an Amazon office out in LA and you have an Amazon office out in New York, and you want to go ahead and share resources and keep your information private, this is something that would you would technically use, or something along these lines, a virtual private network that would be considered site to site. So it's basically like taking the office in LA and the office in New York, and for lack of a better term, turning that into a local area network, where it's just basically, hey, I have the resources here. I don't have to go and travel all the way to New York, so to speak. And we have that information. We're communicating through an encrypted channel. Okay, and encryption is key. Mind you, you have the encryption and you have the authentication. So that would be good, Remember our CIA triad: confidentiality, integrity, and availability. We want to have an availability of data of information, making sure that authorized users who should have information have that information available. Integrity. Remember, when we talk about integrity, we're also talking about going ahead and making sure that the information that we do have is reliable. And then obviously confidentiality with C, making sure that that information is encrypted. Okay. Always revert back to your principles, revert back to your frameworks. One of the frameworks is CIA triad. So VPN site to site. So that is basically taking office in LA, office in New York. And basically combining them together. There's a difference between intranet and extranet. The best way to explain it is intranet is solo enterprise. So that's basically saying, hey, this is completely 100% Amazon. Like we are Amazon. We work for Amazon. We are part of the Amazon team. And this is going to be our intranet network. It is Amazon hands-on only. Extranet, on the other hand, is saying, hey, Amazon hired some third party marketing team, or they hired third party um, software engineers. We need them to have some access to some of the resources because they're working on it as well, but we don't want them to have all complete access. So that would be considered extranet. And that's exactly what I mean by solo enterprise versus multi enterprise. And the biggest takeaway from a VPN that's site to site is that it is cheaper than a dedicated leased line. For those you don't know, a dedicated lease line is basically going out to AT&T, Spectrum, Verizon, and saying, hey, um, and I'm being hyperbolic here, but it's saying like, hey, I'm going to run a LAN cable from LA to New York, and only we can go ahead and send that information. That is a dedicated lease line where literally you're going to the internet service provider and saying, I want a private jet, AKA I want a private line, a dedicated lease line that only our corporation can use, no other corporation. Okay. You can imagine how expensive that would become and how expensive that is. It's like literally going to the state and saying, hey, I'm going to go ahead and build my own road on the freeway and only I can use that lane. That's basically what it is. Obviously, it's a little hyperbolic and whatnot, but it does paint the picture. And if you probably will get a question of the company is trying to find ways to save money. They had a dedicated lease line that is going to go ahead and their contract expires in 6 months. What remedy or what would you recommend to go ahead and continue with the same level of security or similar level of security and save some money? And you would say, hey, VPN site to site. And this goes ahead and paints a picture, as you guys can see. You have organization A, you have organization B, you have some networking equipment. Excuse me, some networking equipment here going to the internet and the VPN tunnel. So the VPN tunnel is that your own little dedicated highway lane. Okay, let's go on to the next one, which is VPN client to site. Guys, this one's really simple. I don't want to barrage this, so to speak, as a client site to site or remote access. It can be VPN remote access, or they can call it VPN client to site. That's basically working from home. That's basically where you have a laptop that connects to the headquarters, which is a lot more prevalent now than it was before. And I think this is definitely somewhere where we're going. I know there's a battle, but that's a topic for another day between working from home or not working from home. But nonetheless, if you're working from home, more than likely you're using a VPN that is considered client to site. That means that you have your laptop connecting to your headquarters. Okay. And you basically go ahead and you provide remote access. To the private network. So this is saying, hey, I have my own laptop, or hey, I have a company laptop, and I'm going to go ahead and log into Amazon's private network, so to speak. So just keep that in mind. Very simple here. You have the individual going ahead and connecting to the resources from that corporation and getting onto their network. Okay. And this one here, the next one and the last one here is very simple. Clientless/personal VPN. Guys, this is very simple. Okay, this is where you go on to YouTube and they go ahead and start telling you about Northern VPN or get this VPN or get this VPN. This is something that you would want to use if you're on public Wi-Fi, if you're out in the coffee shop, out in Starbucks, if you're out in Wi-Fi at McDonald's, if you're out at Burger King, if you're out at um, whatever public Wi-Fi, I would highly recommend, and it is best practice to always keep your VPN on. That way you can go ahead and there isn't somebody there on the laptop sitting in the network with Wireshark looking at all your information, even though that technically would be encrypted because it's HTTPS if you're using the web server. You want to go ahead and have your security in depth. Remember, one of the principles that we talked about was security in depth. Okay, not security by obscurity, but rather security in depth. Going ahead and keeping things logical and simple, but also going ahead and making sure that you have layers of protection at every step that you can within reasonable and logical manners. And that would be the best. Okay, so clientless personal VPN, they give individual users encrypted access to a third party server. And this is another way to go ahead and bypass geolocations. So I gave a silly example here. Example, you have to use an IP address from Greenland to watch a show from Greenland. So Greenland is out there, out in the Atlantic Ocean. And let's just say that there's an amazing show, and that the Greenland said, hey, you know what? You're not allowed to watch this show unless you're from Greenland. You can go ahead and get a clientless slash personal VPN to basically proxy a server giving you an IP address from Greenland, so you can therefore go and watch the show from Greenland. So there's a lot of benefits to going ahead and having a clientless slash personal VPN. Like I mentioned, you encrypt your data, you hide your IP address, you can go ahead and change your location within your IP address. Mind you, none of this stuff is perfect, and all of this is in theory. I'm pretty sure that if people spent enough time and enough money, they can go ahead and crack your VPN, or at least try to figure out exactly where you're coming from, so on and so forth. So nothing is foolproof, nothing is perfect, but nonetheless, as cybersecurity professionals, we do want to go ahead and take precautions and go ahead and focus on our principles and our best practices. So with that being said, guys, and I have a cool little picture here. This is some guy out there in the internet web space, so to speak. But nonetheless, we talked about those three types of VPNs. We went ahead, gave some examples: site to site, clientless. Remember, client to site, also known as remote access. This is the work from home. Site to site, I talked about dedicated lease lines. Clientless, just think about that as on your own time, and you want to go ahead. You're out in the coffee shop and protect your data, so to speak. And those would be the types of VPNs. I did mention in the beginning that I didn't give justice, so to speak, with regards to the types of protocols that are used. As you can see, within these three types of VPNs, there would be technically different protocols used within these. That would be a video for another day, but nonetheless, we will see you guys on the next one.